Friday, January 12th, and wake up. It's a wild card wake up, not your average wake up. Damon, Bruce, Larry Krueger. Good morning, Lawrence. How are you?
Good morning. Today is my 54th birthday, and I overslept my alarm. So there you go.
You buried the lead. Oh, well, it's the first thing you said, so I guess you didn't bury the lead. But I had no idea. Happy birthday, my man.
There you go. So, what can I say? 54 years ago today, I was the great Carroll Krueger brought me into this world. She's no longer with us, but I thank her for it. Thank you.
Well, yeah, absolutely. We all thank her for it. Happy birthday, my man. I had no idea. You are certainly a productive member of society. So, you're a good human as opposed to the bad humans out there. Nice job, Larry, on being a good human. And when it comes to talking about the 49ers and what lies ahead, I don't know if there are any two humans better than the ones that YouTube is looking at right now. So we thank everybody for being here again this morning. It is great to have you here, whether you're watching us live or a little bit later on today throughout the wild card weekend. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Memberships are available, but all memberships should go to Larry on his birthday today. All memberships go to Larry Krueger on his birthday today. I mean it from the bottom of my heart, man. Happy birthday.
Thank you, man. Thank you, man. Appreciate you.
You've been a big part of my career up to this point, and this year you've played your largest role in my career coming over here. So you've been a little bit of a birthday gift to me all year, man. So how about this? For your birthday, Larry, 30 days from now, I really hope you get a Super Bowl. And that's where we are. We are 30 days away from the Super Bowl in Las Vegas. And we both know how crucial it is that the 49ers are in that football game.
Yeah. And then, I don't know if people can tell, but man, I really, really want this. And it's not that, it's like, you cover sports for a living, you grow kind of a little bit out of your fandom. And I'm a Giants fan. I'm a Warriors fan. But I'm also a lifelong Niners fan, and we've been kind of grinding this thing. And, it's like, it's one thing if you're like a Warrior, like I was a Warriors fan forever, but the years went by fast because they never really had a shot. I'm a Giants fan, but you know what? The years go by because it's like, the MLB is kind of a stack cards game. I don't expect the Giants to win, despite the fact they've won 3 in my lifetime now.
Right. And baseball's romantic. You can still have romance with baseball in losing years. I grew up a Cubs fan. I know all about it.
Right. Exactly. And it's like baseball. What is baseball? Baseball is getting a chance to sit outside in nice weather and listen on the radio as you're driving to your vacation destination, or mow the lawn, or wash the car, or at your kid's game, and you're multitasking. So baseball is like a companion all summer, but football is like, and especially the Niners. You and I sat next to each other in the Super Bowl in New Orleans, and I wanted it badly then. And then, we'd never experienced Super Bowl defeat. And then all of a sudden there it was. Harbaugh gagged it away. And then it's like, okay, a couple of years later, here they are again, Shanahan and Lynch, and they got the Chiefs, and they're up 10 in the fourth. And you're like, you know what? They got this one. And they didn't have that one. Mahomes and Reed got that one. And so ever since, there's been this like, Niners have got to get it done, this incredible focus and scrutiny. And, 1 year they got 20 guys on the injured reserve. 1 year they're losing to the Rams in the NFC Championship game. They never quite had the quarterback. Now they've got the head coach. Now they've got the quarterback. Now they've got the defense. Now they've got the bye. Now they've got the health. Everything's aligned, and it's got to happen. And I'm starting to feel a lot of that same pressure that I'm sure the players are feeling. And I asked Kittle about it yesterday. I said, hey, George, is there some urgency? I mean, you're 30 now, and do you feel that urgency to get it done? And he was like, I felt the urgency since Miami, since the 2019 season. And I totally agree with him. I have felt that exact urgency since that 2019 season. Shanahan and Lynch are the right combo. They finally got that right. And they've been knocking at the freaking door. Well, the old Bum Phillips line, last year we knocked at the door. This time it's time to kick that MFer in. And that's how I feel about this year's playoff run. It is time. And if they don't win in the NFC playoffs, there's going to be a lot of criticism. not just from guys like myself, but everybody, the fans, other content creators, the media. The Niners, the hardest thing to do in life, Damon, is what you're expected to do. And the Niners are expected to win in the NFC playoffs. If they lose to the Ravens or a red hot Bills team or somebody else in the Super Bowl, I mean, we're all going to be pissed and disappointed. But if they don't get to the Super Bowl and they get beat by, the Rams, or they don't get to the Super Bowl and somehow Tampa takes them out, or Detroit, or an upstart young Green Bay team, there's going to be a lot of anger and a lot of frustration. And so it's elation or devastation. And you just got to embrace it. And I think they have, and bring it on. I can't wait. This is going to be the most enjoyable weekend, though, because your team's in, your team's in the driver's seat, and you just get to sit back this weekend and just watch it all unfold and scout these teams and check out who's really got the momentum and who doesn't. And as Fred Warner told us yesterday, I hope everybody loses.
Look,
Mark, who are you rooting for this weekend? I hope everybody loses.
That's a very linebacker way to answer that question. He's not happy for victory. He only wants defeat for his opponents. Look, it is the biggest pressure cooker Kyle Shanahan's entire career could ever be put into in 1 month. And he's been in this pressure cooker before, but again, the ingredients weren't the same, Larry. As you pointed out, all the stars have aligned. All the stars that could possibly align on the way to trying to win a Super Bowl for a team that's supposed to. Not ahead of schedule team, but a team that has literally knocked on that door so many years in a row. The amount of NFC title games that Kyle Shanahan has been in with no Super Bowl ring to show for it officially becomes embarrassing if it gets, if that's the way it plays out again. But get to the Super Bowl. And then I think we'll all realize, any rational person would have to say, hey, any one football game is hard to win. But we do expect them to win too before they get to that game. And it's because of who they are, what they've accomplished, how they're built, how they've prepared, how good Kyle is at all this. And honestly, Larry, this is something that you and I have talked about, that it's a little bit of a down year for the NFC. That'll be a criticism. Well, the Niners won it all, and it was a down year for the NFC. If we're being completely honest, it is a scotch of a down year for the NFC. I mean, I really do think that the Cowboys, I don't want to say they're a toothless 2 seed, because they can absolutely beat anybody in this tournament, but I don't think they can beat the Niners, and I don't like the Lions to beat the Niners, and I don't like the Eagles, nor do I like the Buccaneers to beat the Niners. Should either one of those teams show up here? I mean, 2 home games before the Super Bowl sounds like the Niners need to be in this Super Bowl. And when you think about just the pressure, like you said, it's everywhere. It drips off the walls in that locker room right now, but it's a team that wants it. And I think that is as big of a difference maker. There are teams that have that pressure fall on them, and it makes them uncomfortable. This team is inviting that pressure. They've been here. They want it. They haven't shied from it. And I do think that goes into the gumbo.
No doubt. I mean, they've been close. And here's the thing: 2019, they may have been a little bit ahead of their schedule,
They
right? It was like
were.
it was year 3 for Shanahan. I think they had gone 4-12 the year prior, right? So nobody was expecting them to win it that year, and they had this incredible turnaround. And then, they lose to the Rams in the NFC Championship game, and they lose last year to the Eagles. Last year, I thought, was the most painful of all, Damon, because then think about it. There is, in the playoffs, you either win and you move on and there's elation, or you lose and you go home and it's devastation. But last year was the worst of all time, because the game was 6 plays in, and the distance between when the game was over and when the clock struck 0 was eternal.
Right.
I mean, and so we had to sit there after all that buildup, knowing that we were not going to win for so much of that game, and it was so hard. It was
death by paper cuts.
Yeah,
it really was.
It was so hard. And looking back, if I could just say this, looking back, I kind of wish the Niners had gone to kind of almost like the Philadelphia Eagles tush push and just hunkered down, put McCaffrey at quarterback and just tried to push their way to 3rd and short, and then see if Shanahan could dial something up instead of leaning on Josh Johnson, and then Shanahan, I hate to say it, because I really do like Kyle Shanahan, but he badly mismanaged that game. And you say, well, Krug, what do you mean exactly? Well, not challenging the play early, not being ready to challenge right from the anthem. And the challengeable play, you never know where it's going to come up. It came up super early. And so my thought was the same as
the game.
Right. And my thought was the same as everybody else's. It's too early to waste your challenge, right? And just let the game settle in. But that's not always the way the football gods lay it out there. So he didn't challenge there. Mistake number 1. I don't think it was a mistake to block Hassan Reddick with a backup tight end. I think that's Monday morning quarterbacking. But what it was a mistake was when they got the ball back down 7 right before halftime, and you've got Josh Johnson there. The 49ers should have embraced a 7-point deficit in that game. Why? Because that means they're 1 score away from tying the game. And instead, they should have lengthened the game. They should have you should have sat on the ball at the end of the first half and hoped that they could lengthen the game and stay within that score. Instead, he felt urgency to score, backed up on his own, whatever, with Josh Johnson, his 3rd string quarterback. And Johnson throws the pick. They turn it over. If Eagles go up a touchdown, they should have been way more conservative and in that situation with Johnson. Instead, they were more aggressive at the end of the first half in the NFC Championship game with Josh Johnson than they were the week prior with Brock Purdy against the Dallas Cowboys on their home field. They were very conservative against Dallas. They got really aggressive against Philly. Shanahan, I just think, kind of played it wrong. Whatever. They probably weren't going to win anyway. It all leads us to this year. Now is the 49ers' time. And this is not about – the Packers are about the future. Detroit's about the future. The Rams are about the future. The Niners are about the present.
Right.
And I think that's going to show itself.
Well, and look, the Rams are in that envious situation where they're a little bit about the past, too, because they got their Lombardi trophy, and they do have a Super Bowl caliber quarterback and a coach who has done it. And honestly,
Kansas City, too. Kansas City is more about the past.
Larry, I don't know if there is a team that would make the Niners more uncomfortable showing up for the divisional than the Los Angeles Rams. That is going to be a huge hurdle in front of this franchise if that's indeed the matchup that is served to them. And it is one of the great football weekends out there. I mean, it's a wild card weekend. And like you said, no pressure yet building up on any Niners fans. You just sit back, you watch, and you watch the league come to you. Let's see who is going to show up at Levi's Stadium 2 Sundays from now. Or what? I guess that game could be on a Saturday. We'll find out when it's all said and done. But it's it's a tremendous amount of pressure, and it's earned. It's right. I think they're ready for it. And then just the pressure on Kyle alone, as you and I have discussed a couple of times here, the arc of the conversation around that man would change so dramatically. Kyle has, reluctant respect of most of the NFL, where it would turn from reluctant respect into overwhelming adulation for Kyle Shanahan if he were to get this accomplished this year and put a Lombardi trophy on the shelf. The personal accomplishment, the professional accomplishment, whether or not his dad was or wasn't a head coach doesn't even matter. Like, this is his chosen profession. Then you compound that with the fact that it's the family business and it was his dad's profession. And it's basically Shanahan and son, or Shanahan and father in this case, putting together game plans for the 49ers. Becoming a champion at the highest level of competition in the world is, again, about as hard as anything to do in the world. It really is. Winning a professional championship is, as difficult as starting a business and taking it public. I mean, it is a monster accomplishment. We look at all of these well-funded, deep-pocketed teams, and if throwing money at a problem is all it took, all the rich teams would always win every year and there'd be nothing to talk about. You never know where the beating is coming from in this league. That's what makes it magical. That's why 94 of the top 100 watched television shows are football games, because there's drama. Nothing's guaranteed. No matter how good you are, no matter how prepared you might be, anything could go wrong and equal instant catastrophe, a la last year's NFC title game.
Yeah.
Like right when you think you're sitting pretty, it ends horrifically and painfully. And hopefully the Niners have paid enough penance and will have the opportunity to actually be dancing at the end of the season instead of being sitting in the locker room going, what the fuck happened again? Because no one wants to feel that. Again, no one wants to feel that again.
Well, and you know, they have all the momentum in all three phases. You know, they've got a good enough special teams with a punter that can pin you inside your 20, and they got a really good offense with a lot of weapons. They got the right quarterback who wants it and is gonna, you know, this whole idea of rest versus rust on Brock Purdy. There's no rest for Brock Purdy. He's taking mental reps. He's all in. I mean, that's kind of why Jimmy Garoppolo, I think, was so frustrating for Kyle Shanahan, is that Jimmy Garoppolo was not all in. I mean, I think football was what he did. It isn't who he is. I mean, I think Brock Purdy is much more wed to being a player, even though he's got balance in his life with his faith and his family and that kind of thing. He's got it in perspective, but he's driven. You can tell he's driven. And he's not laying around on the couch, Damon. This guy's grinded.
He's the younger guy, but he's the more mature person than Jimmy Garoppolo. And I'm not accusing Jimmy of being immature, but I think Jimmy wants to taste that life, live the spoils, give me a Ferrari, give me a porn star. Let's have a little fun. And I'm not looking down my nose at that. Like, you know, God bless Jimmy Garoppolo.
Well, I mean, it's like, Jimmy, we understand.
Right.
We understand. We understand. But Brock Purdy, you're right. Brock Purdy is a young man and an old soul.
Yes.
And that's really who he is.
Perfect way to say it.
And he's a driven guy. And the one thing I love about the Brock Purdy, I don't know if you heard Schlereth on his podcast talk a little bit about how he, you know, Brock Purdy said to him, hey, look, man, if you think that, you know, I'm a game manager, you either aren't watching or don't know what you're watching. But the best line and the key line, and one that I've heard him say 3, 4, 5 times already this year, is, we'll see when it's all said and done. And when he references that, every time I picture him holding the Lombardi cap backwards, you know, on the stage like Tom Brady after his first Super Bowl, saying, how about this, MFers? You know what I mean? And I think you got to picture that moment, and I think deep down he really has. He won't talk about it, but he's picturing that. And you know what? Bring it on. I feel really, really good about their chances. And then defensively, you know, the 49ers, they've had better defenses than this, but man, they're pretty good on all three phases, and they're rested.
It's good enough. You know, like the arm strength. What about Brock's arm strength? It's good enough. The way that this defense is good enough. They're not the most dominant defense we've ever seen. They're not the most dominant defense in Niners history, but buttressed by an offense that is crisper than any Niners offense we've seen under Shanahan. They're enough. They're enough to get it done. And Steve Wilkes is good enough to get it done. And we all know offensively what this did. What I couldn't believe is you just said they're ready to go in all three phases, and then you started with special teams. And, of course, Wishnowski's had a great year as a punter. But kick return and obviously the Jake Moody panic attack that everybody had after the Rams game. Let me put a little perspective on this for not you, Larry, but anyone watching here. This was a message that I had sent to me. I have not researched this, so let's just assume this is true. This is from SRE 94. I want to credit who wrote this to me in one of the comments, and I actually screenshotted it. The 49ers have made 7 Super Bowls. Moody has a better percentage this year than any other kicker did for them in those years. To my knowledge, they've only had one postseason game in their history that came down to a game winner. So If this guy was awful all year, it would be a different conversation. But Jake Moody, as much as he has disappointed Niners fans a couple of times, has had, any way you want to measure it, a pretty good year kicking a football. So there's that. And then he goes on and wraps up, said this whole pining for Robbie Gould thing. Like, do we fully understand this story on why he's not here? Did he ask for an insane amount of money and that led to the fact that he's not here? So kind of screw Robbie Gould if he did that. Also, if he did try out with the Giants, why didn't they sign him? Right. If he's still Mr. rolls out of bed, impossible to miss a field goal, Johnny Automatic, how come Johnny Automatic didn't get picked up after a tryout against Scrubbinos? And I think that that's realistic too. And he hasn't been in a football locker room all year. So, as we said,
well, there's an answer to that question.
Your kicker's on the team, and you're not going to see another guy kicking for the Niners this year.
The answer is that his average the salary for Jake Moody this year is $1.3 million, and Robbie was making 4.1 and probably wanted 5. To me, the answer is Javon Hargrave. As soon as there was the commitment to go get Javon Hargrave, money had to be cut, and that was one of the areas that it was deemed that it could be cut. And so I think that they said, you know what, and they made the sizable investment of a third-round draft choice in the kid. And I've talked to him a bunch of times, and he's a grounded, solid kid. But let's also not pretend that they've leaned on him this year. They haven't leaned on him this year. He's only made, I think, 2 kicks all year beyond 50. He's already cost them 2 games.
Right, including the franchise record, right?
Well, I mean, the percentage is nice, but they're like 29th in the league in field goals made or field goals attempted. So the reality is that Brock Purdy's dominance within the red zone has made Jake Moody kind of an afterthought. If Jimmy Garoppolo were still the quarterback, crapping out in the red zone 2 out of every 3 times, or at least a third of the time, or whatever the percentage was, you know what? Jake Moody would have been leaned on more often, and we would have a more defined picture of his success pattern or failure pattern. But all I would say for the Niners is, you mentioned 2 areas of question: kickoff return, punt, return game, and the kicker. Well, the Niners don't really have a return game problem in the playoffs. They can put Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk back there and say, you know what? Oh, you guys mentioned it was a problem. It's now a strength. So, and they probably will in the biggest games, and they probably should. Deebo Samuel returning kicks is fine by me, and Brandon Ayuk returning punts is fine by me. And if they don't feel the need to put those guys back there to avoid hits, put Juice back there. Juszczyk can do it, and he's dependable. You just want to make sure you got somebody who's not going to cough up the ball. Right. Everything else is secondary.
Look, if you want to put an athlete back there that you trust to make a play, do that. If you just want to fair catch the ball, do that. If you want to put 11 on the line of scrimmage and just sell out for the block and let that punt die wherever it dies on the football field, do that. It just cannot be a turnover. That's right. Don't
lose it. Don't lose the game on special teams.
The punt cannot work against you in this postseason at any point in time. A turnover, if a turnover means a lot in the regular season, it means twice as much in the postseason. Possessions are rare. Like you said, you're lucky if you got 12 in a football game. If you get 12 possessions, you were scoring quickly, or that other team was going 3 and out an awful lot, and you're kicking ass that day. So expect it to be more like 8 to 10 possessions, and you just cannot cough one of those up against a good football team. And there's nothing but good football teams left in the frame. A couple of topics that people are certainly talking about, Larry, as we slip into Wild Card Weekend, is that we've got a paywall for the very first time. And it's they're not joking around. The NBC wants you to pick up Peacock so badly that they put the Kansas City Chiefs and Miami Dolphins, what I think had, game of the weekend type of billing to put on it. They sold that to Peacock for, I believe, $110 million. And then Peacock, who's already made the purchase, gets Taylor Swift for free, and say what you want. We're not ripping her at all. When Taylor Swift, just to use simple numbers, if 10 people were going to watch today's game, The minute you put Taylor Swift sitting in a press box, 13 people will now be watching today's game. She adds a significant percentage of audience just by being Taylor Swift in a location. And that is going on Peacock.
Get a life, by the way. I mean, my God, get a life.
Hey,
who cares who's sitting in the stands? I mean, seriously, you got to seriously check yourself if you're going to sit down for 4 hours to watch a football game because somebody in the stands is famous.
Larry, 14-year-old girls show up by the millions.
Is she performing at halftime?
No, but she'll.
Then what the hell are we talking about?
What's she wearing? What kind of earrings does she have in? Is she wearing a bedazzled jersey? Let's look at Brittany Mahomes sitting next to her. I mean, it's the gossip column coming to an NFL stadium. So
then I'm glad Peacock chose that game, by the way. Then I'm glad. And and believe me, she's not going to be wearing anything other than layers because it's going to be 2 degrees.
It is going to be freezing at Arrowhead Stadium. Miami Dolphins, you blew it by not getting that home game. But look, the fact that this is going behind a paywall is just a sign of the times that we're living in. And Larry, would you say today's your 54th birthday? How about
54th.
This? Before your 74th birthday, in the next 20 years, the Super Bowl is going behind a paywall. The Super Bowl is going to be a pay-per-view event. If Logan Paul can get 1.5 million pay-per-view buys, what do you think the Super Bowl could do?
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be a huge mistake. I really do, because I think you want to have the biggest possible audience for your marquee game.
But the NFL
this is the wrong place to money grab.
Hold on, but the NFL has already made the choice. They will take the bigger payday, even if it includes a smaller audience.
Well, they're wrong. Then they're stupid because the NFL
now.
Amazon
Prime won because
but think about it this way:
people watching, but they don't care because they got an amount of money that is Brink's truck backing up.
No, I know, but there's more to it. It's about cultivating a fan base in this overall entertainment pie. And there's a reason that the Niners pack the house on the road, because they're an iconic franchise. Why they're an iconic franchise? Because they've been good for years.
Right, because we all
same thing about the Steelers and Cowboys. Yeah, I mean, it's like, you got to let people fall in love before you can tell them that, there's a tax on it. If you try to tax people as they're on their way in the door and they're not in love with it, they just stop coming through the door. You got to give them a little bit of the treats and let them get addicted. I mean, I can remember, if you said to me, when did you fall in love with the NFL? I can think of 2 games distinctly. It was the Raiders and the Vikings in Super Bowl 11, and it was Cowboys and Steelers in Super Bowl 13. I was 11, I was 13. Or no, I was 9 and I was 11. And I guess I must be even younger than that. I was probably 7 and then 9. So that's really when I first got a chance to watch, the pomp and circumstance of Super Bowl Sunday. And I can remember there's been so many games, but I can remember the Raiders beating the Vikings on that super bright day, and Sammy White getting destroyed by Jack Tatum in the middle of the field. And I can remember Cowboys Steelers 35-31 and Staubach and Bradshaw and, all that back and forth, one of the greatest Super Bowl games ever. And to me, I was hooked at that point. And I think that's what you got to do when your sport, and this is where baseball's got a major problem. They don't resonate with the 7, 8, 9-year-old. That's when you decide if you're a fan or not. And baseball doesn't resonate. And the 7, 8, and 9-year-olds doesn't really care about baseball.
Right. But
that's why baseball is dying.
But the deal is, though, Larry, the 7, 8, 9-year-old on Super Bowl Sunday isn't picking what's on TV. The adult in the room is picking what's on TV, and the adult in the room will pay for the Super Bowl paywall to get the Super Bowl, and the kid will watch it anyway. The kid won't know that it was an extra $19.99 or $29.99 or $99.99, whatever they're going to charge. Like, if you want to,
what about the poor kid? What about the poor family?
Do
You
you
don't
think
want
the
to price people out. You want to.
Do you think the NFL cares about the poor
Well, I mean, they
at
they
all?
should they
At
should
all? Of
because
course
as
they
as
should,
as
but they
time goes on,
don't.
if you really want to be front and center in the world, you've got to, rich and poor alike have got to be into it. And when you make it just a rich man's game, I mean, that's what baseball's done. Baseball's priced out the kid from the inner city. So guess what happens? The kid who loved baseball and now knows that travel ball is going to cost $2,000 and mom and dad don't have $2,000. They just go, it's okay, mom and dad. I love you anyway. I'll just take my basketball and I'll go shoot at the hoop on the corner. And now I'm a big basketball fan. And that's how, why do you think soccer and basketball have grown on a global stage so exponentially in recent years compared to some of these other sports? It's because it doesn't take anything. It's just a ball, heck, in foreign countries, they're shooting on a milk crate tied to a wooden board in a dirt field, and they're calling that a basket. So it's just, all I'm saying is, I know you're totally right as far as it's going to be. That's where we're headed. I mean, there's no doubt that's where we're headed is the pay-per-view. But as soon as you make a pay-per-view, there will be people that have to make decisions on, are they going to pay?
Things that we think are permanent and forever change. We're watching it in the media. It happens rapidly. I mean, you need so many different streaming services just to watch your favorite team all year long. They should put all those streaming services together in one bundle and just call it cable. You need so much of it these days.
And older people struggle with it, by the way. And my dad was a huge baseball fan. He's no longer with us, but he would call like on a Friday night, hey, where's the Giants game? It's not on. I'm like, Dad, it's on, whatever, Amazon, Apple, or whatever. It's Friday night. Oh, how do I do that? Here, get your mother in here. Here, talk her through it. It's like, now I'm like, trying to land a plane virtually or something, because they couldn't figure it out. So to me, it should be like in addition to, but I understand why they make it, exclusive. They're trying to drive the audience to it.
I don't know. I cannot confirm whether or not we've got a little breaking news. I just went to the front page of ESPN to find out if it was. It's not there yet, but we have several different members in our chat. If it's one or two people, Larry, maybe it's just conversation or a wish. If it's several people, maybe it's actually happening. Adam Peters to Washington is something that I've seen 4 or 5 or 6 different times from different people in our chat who are not here to just goof around.
Yes, it's accurate. You can go to profootballrumors.com. The Washington is hiring Adam Peters as general manager. Again, according to Adam Schefter and Ian Rappaport, Peters will likely take the title of president of football operations. This is the Bob Myers dream. Bob Myers did not go, say, what's next for Bob Myers? Everybody was wondering that. He could do anything he wants. He wants to be a billionaire, I'm sure. And he at least wants to be on his way to being a billionaire. So he goes to a dormant. I mean, what were the Warriors? The Warriors were a dormant, somewhat iconic franchise, even though I'm sure people would argue that. But the Commanders, who used to be the Redskins, were an iconic franchise with Jack Kent Cooke and Bobby Beathard and Joe Gibbs. Dan Snyder ruined that. And so Bob Myers was hired with one goal.
It's one of the great brand ruinings of our lifetimes.
No doubt. And a rapid one at that. And while the NFL has grown up in around it, they still are not in the same status. So Myers was brought in to rebuild the iconic brand known as the Redskins, now the Commanders. And so he's going to do the game plan of hire Adam Peters, let Peters hire a head coach, have success on the field, get the fans back. Then, because you got the fans back, get a new stadium, move out of FedEx Field, and turn that franchise, increase the value of that franchise by $2 billion. And if you're Bob Myers, maybe keep $500 million, and I think that's clearly the plan.
Do you think
it's a big loss for the Niners?
Okay, so it is a big loss for the Niners. Let's look at this from an Adam Peters is now calling the shots for the Commanders. I mean, there are 2 phone calls that you have to make first, right? The first is to Bill Belichick. The second is to Jim Harbaugh.
Right. I mean, it really depends on what they're looking for. I was looking at the odds as far as our good buddy Jimmy Shapiro puts out odds on all this stuff, and he had sent me the odds on the coaches yesterday, and I have it here, and I can tell you who the favorite was. The Commanders head coach, it's 2-1 odds that it's Ben Johnson, the OC of the Lions. Then Belichick at 3-1, Harbaugh at 6-1, Mike McDonald at 9-1. So I'll say this. Let me throw another name in there. I think there's a very good chance that Peters brings Slowick, who was, Bobby Slowick, who's thought to be a little bit of a star in his own right in the head coaching circles. And obviously Peters knows him from San Francisco before he jumped jumped away in Slowick was with Tennessee. Who did Slowick jump to? I'm forgetting.
Was it Tennessee? Because if it was Tennessee, maybe he got ousted with Vrabel.
No, I'll look it up. But Bobby Slowick, if anybody knows where Bobby Slowick jumped to last year, I'm just let me check. But yeah, so I think Bobby Slowick could be a name.
Texas.
Yeah, Houston. Yeah, he went to Houston.
That's right. He that makes sense. He went with D'Amico.
That's right. And look at the year. I mean, look at the incredible year that they had, and the incredible year that CJ Stroud had. And the Niners offense is one that lots of people want to copy, and they believe, what will work. So I could see Slowick being there. I couldn't really see Belichick and Harbaugh. I don't know about Harbaugh, but I think Ben Johnson is going to be a hot name. I would see it's probably between Slowick and Ben Johnson to be the next coach. And I'm really disappointed in this one, but I mean, the 49ers, when they gave John Lynch a promotion and a new title, they didn't give Adam Peters a promotion and a new title, and maybe the handwriting was on the wall at that point. But I thought it was kind of a foregone conclusion when Rand Carthon left last year that that Lynch was going to be the guy, at least in the short term, and that that Peters was the heir apparent, and that's why Rand was jumping. And instead, Peters jumps as well. So this is a real loss. I mean, Adam Peters is the one guy that really has, the personnel chops. John's a former safety and a TV guy. He's a player. He's obviously knows a lot of personnel, and then they have other people within their system that are growing up and doing well. But maybe the Niners will fill that internally. But that's a major loss. You got to get the personnel part right.
And nobody's perfect. If Adam Peters had a big hand in let's pick Trey Lance, then good riddance, right? I not good riddance. Obviously, he's very good at what he does, but nobody's perfect when it comes to putting a roster together or draft picks or anything like that. But the decisions, more often than not, under his tenure have been good decisions,
especially day 3 of the draft and especially after the draft. So we'll see if we'll chart this going forward to see how things go. But there's some other people in the 49er organization that are highly thought of behind Lynch. And
look, beyond Adam Peters, who you can't have because he just left. The 49ers are very much would you like to come work for us? A lot of people are standing in that line organization. So if they do expand this search outside of their own organization, I'm sure that they will have, a whole bunch of 5-star recruits in the player personnel department who would be interested in coming and working for what I think everyone regards as a really well-run franchise. The 49ers for, I don't know, that window between.
Okay, wait. We should one thing. one thing, Damon, not to interrupt you, but Steve Cass says, stop the BS. The report is the Commanders are working on making Peters the GM. The Niners can still sway him if Jed is willing to pay and give him the title. It's not a done deal yet. Let me just read to you the way it's worded here, and you guys can decide for yourself.
Okay.
Ian Rappaport of the NFL Network is noting that Peters will likely take on the title of president of football operations. But Schefter's report says Washington is hiring Adam Peters as general manager. So I got to think that that he's going to do it. But you're right. Steve, you're right in that the Niners there is no salary cap for what you pay executives. So if the the guy's from Cupertino, he left the Broncos to come to the Niners because he wanted to be in the Bay Area. If Lynch said, hey, you know what? I want to win a title and ride off into the sunset within the next 3 years, the Niners could pay Peters whatever they want to retain him and give him whatever title they want. But ultimately it's about running your own show. And I think that's probably, I can't believe that Bob Myers, as much as he's been spotted at Niner games. They both went to UCLA. I got to think that this is not like, oh, they just discussed this week. They've been planning on this and talking about this. And if Peters wasn't going down this road, I don't know. I mean, it could be a huge leverage play to get Jed to pay him more, but maybe maybe John Lynch has said that he wants to be, here longer than I believe. Maybe John Lynch is loving this job and wants to be here for the next decade. I don't know. And if that's the case, Peters probably should jump.
And look, Steve Cass, thank you very, very much for the trying to clarify what happens. It's still, again, this is all breaking news. Neither Larry nor I have a producer trying to get us the right article here. We're just looking for it. And we thank everyone for helping us out. We want to get the story right. It is a group effort over here on YouTube. Can you take Steve down now, Larry? We don't need Steve yelling at us the entire show.
Yeah.
I love Steve. Thank you, Steve. Look,
we'll replace it with a super chat. Ricky Williams says we lost Adam to the Commanders. There you go.
Okay, well, thank you, Ricky. I wonder if that's the Ricky Williams, and if it is, that brings me to my next perfect transition here, Larry. Who's your weed guy? Because I need your weed guy because you were
Steven Seaweed. Steven Seaweed,
love one of the great DJs ever.
He wasn't my weed guy. He was the weed man.
The weed man. Larry, how high were you when you were like, if the Niners don't get it done this year, they should call Bill Belichick and see if he wants to be the defensive coordinator? Are you out of your mind?
No. I mean, first of all, everybody just immediately is, and I get it. You say things and people are like, dude, that's a terrible take. Well, we don't know what Belichick. Wait a second. We don't know what Belichick wants to do. The assumption is that he wants that record that Don Shula has. But you know what, Damon? I'm not convinced that that's the case at all. And the people that I've talked to, and I've talked to multiple national people around the league who know what's going on, said that Bill's not going to coach again, and that Bill's not going to be a GM, that Bill's going to be kind of a defensive consultant, and that he's done with the coaching gig. I mean, we're talking about a 73-year-old man. Now, I know there's a lot of young football fans, so they don't know their football history, but Bill Walsh coached Stanford after he won 3 Super Bowls. Sid Gilman was a great, he's like the father of the forward pass. This guy was a star coach in the 50s with the Rams and the 60s with the Chargers. He was the Eagles quarterback coach in 1981. That's a major step down. Heck, I was just at Niners Ravens on Christmas night. I bumped into Ozzie Newsome. I shook hands with him, said, hey, how you doing, Ozzie? Ozzie is not retired. Ozzie has kicked himself into a football consultant role. Eric DeCosta is the new GM in Baltimore. All I'm saying is, for the very, very best, for the very, very most respected football people, they can do lesser roles in the twilight. Especially, we're talking about a guy who's coached 50 years, who's almost 70, mid 70s. the assumption that Bill Belichick's going to be a coach, I think is it could happen, but and this idea that he could just have his pick of jobs, I don't think so, man. And the ones that are rumored to be he could be headed to are places like Atlanta and Carolina.
Yeah.
What does Bill Belichick really want? If he wants a fat check, go to Carolina. David Tepper will cut him a big check. But I get the feeling that he wants to get back to his roots, and he says he loves coaching. And I think that's what he wants to do. He's a defensive coach. He's a defensive backfield coach. And think about it this way. He's really tight with Kyle Shanahan. He's really tight with John Lynch. He likes those guys. That's how Jimmy Garoppolo got here for a second-round pick way back when. So all I'm saying is, if Bill Belichick just wants to be a defensive czar, if you're the Niners, let's just say you fall short here, what's the pivot? I mean, Shanahan's not going to blame himself. He's going to blame the defense. And Steve Wilkes could move on. And they could promote somebody like Daniel Bullocks to defensive coordinator who's pretty young. And they could pay a Bill Belichick big money to be their defensive replacement czar. Now, he's not going to be some grinder, but don't look at it as a demotion. It wouldn't be a demotion. It would be like he's working with with an offensive guru as the defensive guru to lead the next defensive coordinator. I know it sounds crazy now, and I know it's not. People are thinking, "Oh, he's going to lead his own ship. He's Bill Belichick," but Walsh did it. Sid Gilman did it. Ozzie Newsome did it. Belichick could do it. It's probably not going to happen, but I mean, where if you're Bill Belichick, would you rather? I mean, think about it this way. You also got to think about legacy. What if he goes to Carolina and they don't win anything? Now his legacy somewhat is tarnished. Yeah, he was done at the end. He couldn't get it done. What if he goes to Atlanta and they fail? He's already had this failure with New England. So Bill Belichick, the general manager, let down Bill Belichick, the head coach. Bill Belichick's defense, though, is still outstanding. And if you look at the 49ers, what do they have? They've got 5 or 6 young DBs that really could use a Bill Belichick.
I think I saw an incredible stat that over his 24-year career as head coach, they allowed 1.2 points per opponent drive, which is still like the best. Is the best certainly over a 24-year run. I mean, he is a spectacular X's and O's teacher of the game coach. But
at his core, he's the best. He's the best defensive back. His expertise was always in defensive backfield
secondary play. Absolutely.
Yeah, he's right there with George Seifert and Bud Carson as like the greatest DB coaches of all time.
Yeah,
and the Niners did for years and years and years they employed some older guys. I mean, Bill McPherson was coaching in his mid-70s. Now, was he the DC? No, Ray Rhodes was. But he was a defensive consultant, and I could see, and you could pay Belichick anything you want, by the way. So, like, if you're Bill Belichick, would you rather go fail in? He's got, the guy's already got 8 Super Bowl rings, 6 as a head coach, 2 as a defensive coach with the Giants under Parcells. What he truly loves at his core is coaching and coaching DBs. And I'm not saying he's going to be the Niner DB coach. And I don't even think he'd be necessarily the coordinator, but I could think they could pay him a fat amount of money to be a defensive consultant. And I could see it. Now, a lot of people can't see it. We'll see how it goes.
It's wishful thinking. I think it's a little bit of a pipe dream when a man is probably a handful of wins away from being the all-time winningest head coach. I don't think he's looking to be anything other than a head coach. Should he leave New England?
Seem like the kind of guy that wants that record, though. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
Well, he doesn't seem like he's motivated by anything, because that's the camera-facing Bill Belichick feels like he's detached, but he's very attached to the game. And if you ask me, what do you think Nick Saban would do next? I'd tell you, well, he'll probably go like coach a high school or a Pop Warner team, just to be a teacher of the game in a much pressureless level. Like, I could see Bill Belichick doing that, or like, going to he's the next head coach of Amherst College or something, just something really off the radar.
He coached lacrosse at Amherst.
You're right.
No, I think
it's a massive pipe dream to think that he will show up to fix a Niner defense should that let it down. I just don't think he's anything other than a head coach at this point in his in his life cycle, and he's got one more coaching cycle in him. And I don't think he's going to carry anybody's bags. He wants to run the show.
We'll see. But you got to remember this: if the Niners fall short, there's going to be a ton of pressure to do something of significance to run it back, and it's not going to be a long-term play. It's going to be a short-term play. And Bill, there's no doubt he's the czar of defense, and Shanahan's not going to blame himself if they fall short. He's going to blame the defensive shortcomings, and I think that may align. But maybe I'm wrong. Tariq Ahmad, the director of college scouting, I think is a star within the Niners system. There's another star within the Niners system. His name's Josh Williams, and he's a national scout. He went to my high school, St. Ignatius High School. Josh is a tremendous guy. I think Josh is maybe a year or two early on becoming the new Adam Peters, but Josh would be a great candidate, and Tariq I could see being the call. So that would be my guess as far as replacement. And Mick Mallow here is right on the money. Shows how smart some of the people in our chat really are. Mick's all over it. Tariq Ahmad, he says, is taking Peters' place. Maybe he's got sources, but there's no doubt that Mick is right. Tariq is in line. He's next up. He was the director of college scouting.
Well, look, nothing lasts forever, I guess, is the theme of this segment, right? And I guess that has to bring us to an in-division rival that is making a massive change. I didn't think that Pete Carroll was going to be stepping aside or being asked to step aside, as apparently kind of what happened up in Seattle. I thought that their season was pretty good considering all the moving parts around their season, an injury to their starting quarterback. You know, they were in Drew Lock time there, and I thought that they had some decent success with Drew Lock going in for Geno. I thought that the Seahawks were good. Like, they weren't bad. And I'm surprised that it's amazing to say Pete Carroll's a 70-year-old man. He looks so good still. He's just got that California boyish, presentation about him. But Pete
went
Carroll,
to Redwood High School. He's a Marin guy from Larkspur, or Marin. Redwood's in Larkspur.
Pete Carroll's gone. I mean, in the same week where Bill Belichick and Nick Saban exit, and you can't find bigger football exits than that. It feels like Pete Carroll got a little short shrift in terms of any sort of waxing poetic about who he's been, what he's meant, not just to Seattle, but to the sport of football in its entirety, going back to his head coaching days at USC, the rising like a phoenix from the disaster that was the New England Patriots head coach for a minute, who was the New York Jets head coach for a minute. I mean, Pete Carroll, when he got to USC, was an NFL laughingstock. And for him to have come back from USC, he exited right at the right time, right when the sirens were getting there to, throw USC into college football's, temporary jail. He shows up in Seattle. A lot of eye rolling was attached to, Pete might have been good at USC, but back in the NFL, he's going to get embarrassed again. Well, he embarrassed more teams than he was embarrassed. He and Russell Wilson together were one of the all-time thorns in the side of the San Francisco 49ers, and presiding over the Legion of Boom, he had an era. He might have only had one Super Bowl, but for an era there, the Seahawks, were the best looking, best dressed girl in the high school. They were a monster. They really were. So, all you can do is say cheers to Pete Carroll, who was a hell of an opponent. I mean, that guy gave the Niners everything they wanted and then some.
He started as a GA at UOP in 1973. I was 3 years old. He's been doing it forever. I mean, what can you say? Isn't it amazing if you look at it? I don't know if I would agree with your laughing stock, because the Niners, he was a respected defensive coordinator with the Niners in the mid 90s, but he hadn't been. It's amazing that he had not been successful as an NFL head coach.
He had that good assistant, not a head guy. He was
thought to be too nice. He was thought to be too nice.
Not a leader of men is one thing I heard attached to him, and that's why he'll have success maybe in college, because those are the boys. But when he gets in front of men, no, it's not going to happen. Well, it happened.
And he picked the right general manager, John Schneider, and those two guys were locked at the hip. And yeah, I mean, Pete's two most successful runs were USC's head coach. He totally rejuvenated that entire program. And then what he did in Seattle. And he should have won 2 rings. He only won 1. We all know how it happened, but this guy's a Hall of Famer, man. He's won a national championship on the college level. He's won a Super Bowl on the pro level. He's been the coach of the year. He won the Pac-12 7 times. So yeah, I mean, incredible record. 170 and 120 and 1 as a head coach in the NFL. Only 500 in the playoffs, 11 and 11, 83 and 19 in college, won 81% of his games. And all I would say is this is the right time. And, you know, some of these guys are such lifers that they almost have to have somebody kick them to the next stage of their life. You're 72 years old. You know, unless you know something I don't know, you don't got a lot of time left. And, you know, he probably, I mean, whatever, you made a lot of money. You've been, you know, football hours are long and arduous. And I realize it's your chosen profession and this is what you love to do. And I get it. But, you know, you're talking about go do something else. I mean, you know, he's got a wife, he's got 3 children, he's probably got some grandchildren. Go enjoy them. You're 72, travel the globe, do some philanthropic things, do whatever your second interest is. But I will say this too. He also had a great coaching tree when you really look at it. He worked under some amazing coaches, George Seifert, Jerry Burns, Bud Grant, Kay Stevenson, who I worked for in the Canadian League, Monty Kiffin, Lou Holtz. But he also, 15 of his assistants became NFL or NCAA head coaches, guys like Ed Orgeron, Lane Kiffin, Bo Pelini, Sarkisian, Norm Chow, Gus Bradley, Dan Quinn, Robert Saleh, and a lot of his guys who worked with him became executives, became GMs in the NFL. Charlie Armey, Jason Licht, who's now in Tampa, Scott McLuhan, Chris Greer, Scott Fitterer, who just got dumped by the Panthers. So he's had a pretty good, you know, not pretty good. He's had a Hall of Fame coaching career. He's a great guy. He's a positive guy. And a Bay Area son, and I wish him well. And
yeah,
and he's going to stay in Seattle as a consultant.
That's the thing. And he's not leaving. Like, this guy isn't in line for another head coaching job. I think he's reached that point in his life where he is like, all right, I'm 70. And I think that the plan was
they're going to go Dan Quinn here. I think.
Yeah, I think the plan was he was going to come back, but then, you know, you sleep on it for a night or two. You talk, you realize, do I really want to do another year? Do I want to commit? And he's like, you know, I want to stay around football, but maybe not as the head coach of the Seahawks. So he's going to get kicked upstairs and be given a golden parachute, but still be involved, I'm sure, in some way. Still going to go through at least a stick of gum every 15 minutes. Pete can't give that up. But look, a truly worthy opponent. Like, that's what made the Seahawks and the 49ers such a great rivalry, because they were worthy opponents against each other. Even when the Niners were getting their ears boxed in by the Seahawks, they were still pretty damn good, you know? So he's one of those, he was the bad guy, but he was a pretty good guy for being a bad guy. So
what's your deal?
Yeah.
Him and Harbaugh. What's your deal? That was great.
Cheers,
yeah, no, Pete's
cheers to Pete Carroll. Cheers to Pete Carroll.
Yeah, cheers to Pete Carroll, and good guy. And you know, I wish him well. I do believe Dan Quinn will take over that job in Seattle. They'll have continuity with their defense, because, you know, Quinn will come in and run that same scheme. John Schneider is still a very young man in the GM circles, and let's be honest, Schneider's done a really nice job at restocking the cupboard. I mean,
they've got a lot of good young pieces. A lot.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, and they looked like they were going to be on the outs for a while. And he gets Charles Cross and Abraham Lucas in one draft. Then he gets Devin Witherspoon and Tariq Woolen, and they signed Julian Love, who's a tremendous player. It's like they rebuilt their secondary. They're close to having the Legion of Boom back there. They're not quite what they want to be up front, and they obviously need their quarterback of the future. And maybe it's Michael Penix. Who knows? Maybe it's Bo Nix. My guess is it's one of those two guys. There's two quarterbacks in this draft, both coming out of the Pacific Northwest, and I think Seattle's going to wind up getting one of them.
The longest tenured NFL head coach now is Mike Tomlin. 17 seasons with the Steelers, never a losing season. He is in yet another postseason, although I don't think you or I are going to be picking the Steelers over the Bills. Followed by John Harbaugh, who's at 16 seasons now. Andy Reid has been with the Chiefs for 11 seasons. And then Sean McDermott, Kyle Shanahan, and Sean McVay have all been in their head coaching spots now. This is season number 7 for all of them that just passed. Zach Taylor and Matt LaFleur are both just completed their 5th seasons with Cincinnati and Green Bay, respectively. So it's amazing how that turn just keeps on going. The NFL stops for no one, waits for nothing, and we keep on going. But Mike Tomlin, now the longest tenured NFL head coach, now that Bill Belichick and Pete Carroll have left. We have to say something about Nick Saban. One of the single most dominant programs of our lifetime in the sport of football has closed the curtain on an era here with Nick Saban's retirement. And Larry, there are certain sports stats that when you hear them, you're just like, wow. Maybe the single greatest stat I've ever heard attached to a player in my lifetime. Any sport, like what's the greatest stat you've ever heard, right? Tony Gwynn, so Tony Gwynn could have gone 0 for 1,000 in his last 1,000 career at-bats, and Tony Gwynn would have still been a 300 lifetime hitter. I remember hearing that in his final season and just going, wow. I mean, and Tony Gwynn was the first true opponent who I fell in love with. Tony Gwynn, even though he never played for the Cubs, is one of my 5 favorite baseball players of all time. I loved Tony Gwynn. Go down the rabbit hole of Tony Gwynn statistics. It's one of the greatest rabbit holes you can fall into if you're a baseball dork. I think Tony's stat has been replaced, Larry. And being a personnel guy, your nipples are about to get hard. Are you ready for the single greatest stat you've ever heard in your life?
Yes.
Under Nick Saban, Alabama had more players drafted in the first round, 44, than he had losses, 29. More first-round draft picks than he had losses as a head coach at Alabama. That's one of the greatest holy shit stats I've ever heard in my life. There will never be anyone who does that again. Are you kidding? That's insane.
It is amazing. Yeah, no, I mean, and the coaching tree he's had is extensive. He was on the Don James coaching tree, and so many coaches coached under him. And it's not just players that he developed an awful lot of coaches along the way. So the guy, it's funny too. It's like figure out what you're good at and stick with it, and that's what Nick did. And Nick was sub 500 as an NFL head coach, right? I mean, he's 15-17 in the NFL, but he's 292, 71-1 in college. And there was some dysfunction there as far as some of his communication and some of he was so strident in so many ways, but there's also a lot of moral compass there as well. This guy's a devout Catholic, used to go to mass before every game and that kind of thing.
Here's the thing. Even if you're not, you have to pretend to be in the South.
Well, but he is, to me, the the whole Nick Saban story. I mean, he so much in recent years of his lectures to his players were about life and not football. And I just think that, he definitely has strong feelings. I did for a couple years, while I was at KMBR, a regular hit with Fran Tarkenton. Fran Tarkenton and Nick are buddies. And I would imagine, unlike Pete Carroll and unlike Bill Belichick, Nick Saban is just gonna, hang out at the lake and sit there and swap stories with Fran over cocktails,
I think
forward.
you know what? I guarantee you, Larry, it takes about 12 months, and then he's going to realize I'm bored. And I bet you he does. Like I can see Nick Saban at some Alabama high school someday. Like Nick Saban still coaching, but just at a much different level because he just loves the game still. Like maybe that's the road Bill Belichick travels at some point. But I do think Bill's going to have not just one more head coaching payday, but try to get that head coaching all-time win record attached to his name and then drift off to the sunset. But these guys, they're addicted to winning. They're addicted to competition. And when the winning in the competition goes away, they become impatient. We saw the same thing happen with Bruce Bochy, right? Bruce Bochy, I think, was incredibly satisfied with a well-lived, already a Hall of Fame career when he departed the San Francisco Giants, or, however you want to say that ended. I do think that he legitimately wanted to go fishing in the Gulf of Mexico for about a year or two. And then he was like, this is just fucking fishing in Mexico. I need to be in a dugout. And he comes back to a dugout, and the man who's addicted to winning gets another World Series. So
how old is Boch, though?
Boch has got to be 67, 8, 9, yeah. Right? I mean,
Saban's 72. I mean,
right.
Come on.
He's 72.
I don't know. I think at some point, why do all the work and accumulate all the money and all this? And the guy's won 7 national championships. He's won 11 SEC titles. The guy's, he's a 2-time coach of the year. He's he's a 5-time SEC coach of the year. I mean, at some point, you want to enjoy something. I mean, you married the woman. Don't you want to travel the globe? Maybe don't you got kids, you got grandkids. Don't you want to, I don't know, maybe go to a birthday party? And sometimes I wonder about, some of these guys. It's like, yeah, I mean, I understand there's only so much you can do, but I mean, you've done an incredible amount. You've made an incredible amount of money. Just enjoy the twilight years and enjoy your family and good health while you have it. Right.
Absolutely. I mean, that's how well-rounded, considerate people would think. I just don't know how many head coaches are well-rounded. I mean, they get addicted to the game, to the competition, to the winning. They really do. And I think it might trump some of their feelings of, now it's time for me to be a grandpa or travel the world with my wife. That's just the way these guys are. They're not like us. They're abnormal. Yeah. They are different people. They really are. The way that professional athletes have different bodies than normal civilians, I think professional coaches have different minds and are set differently than just normal civilians. It's the way it goes.
And somebody says, hey, it's the thrill of it, Larry. No, I get it. I mean, they're addicted to the excitement, and you can't be a type A personality and be an incredible competitor. It's a very difficult thing to turn off. But at the end of the day, it's still what you do. It shouldn't be who you are. And I don't know. I personally,
it's like in the movie Heat. I'm in it for the juice, Neil. I'm in it for the juice.
Yeah,
it's not the payday. So when I was texting back and forth with our producer of Wake Up, Kevin Krueger, related to Larry Krueger, by the way, I was telling him that I had a little segment that I think he's going to be able to make a video out of. And that segment is right here and right now. Larry, are you ready for the 2023 49er regular season awards?
Yes. Wait a second, Damon. Hold on.
Yes. Ooh.
I've got something I want to add to that. Hold on.
Oh my God. Well, I can't wait to see Like Price Waterhouse, I have already selected all the winners and put them in an envelope. I actually did this segment on my show. So, Larry, I have all my answers. I'm not going to be changing my answers to fit your answers. Let's see how many of your answers align with my answers, how similarly we think about this, how differently we think about this. Are you ready, sir?
I absolutely am ready.
I'm going to try to do a better job hosting this segment than Joe Coy did the Golden Globes. Are we ready? Here we go. Yes. Larry, our first award, it's up to you to decide who it goes to. The category is Most Valuable Brock. Who do you think is the most valuable Brock on the San Francisco 49ers? Basically, we had to give you-know-who his own category because he would have won basically all the rest of them. So, most valuable Brock, which are you going with?
Is there a second?
There's only one, baby.
I'm going with Brock Purdy.
Absolutely. I mean, a remarkable story, a rise from last pick in the draft to legitimate MVP candidate. All good things flow through Brock, and we just needed to get him up front because he could be he's your team MVP. He's your Len Eschmont Award winner in terms of inspiration. He is, I think, maybe the media's choice for most cooperative 49er as well. Like, Brock has just done an incredible job with any and all aspects of being a professional quarterback of the San Francisco 49ers, which is harder than most professional quarterbacks have it. I mean, are you a center fielder or are you a center fielder for the New York Yankees? Are you a shortstop or are you a shortstop for the New York Yankees? Are you a quarterback or are you a quarterback of the San Francisco 49ers? Because these things are not created equal. This man has risen and met every standard that could be applied to the most scrutinized position in maybe all sports.
The guy's been incredible, absolutely incredible. And, what can you say? He's fantastic. He is absolutely him. And people who doubted this guy, and I do get it because you didn't get a chance to meet him. But if you met this guy, you would say, absolutely, you're not surprised. By the way, the All-Pro team is out as well. We can play with that when we're done with this.
Our next award, Larry, and this is how you want to interpret it to decide whom to give it to. Who is your greatest difference maker? And we're taking Brock off the board for the rest of these categories. He's already won Most Valuable Brock, so he's eliminated from any and all consideration going forward. Greatest difference maker on the 2023 Niners regular season was?
It has to be Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey had an amazing year. And from minicamp on, he was the 49er player that shined brightest. He showed in minicamp that he was going to play at a Jerry Rice type level. And he stood out on a field of great players. He stood out as the greatest of great players with his effort and his athleticism. So Christian McCaffrey, without a doubt.
I also selected Christian McCaffrey, and I'll buttress it with this. The 49ers were 12-4 in games that he played this season. He sat the Rams game, so he doesn't get credited for the loss in that. And in 2023, he made his debut against the Chiefs, caught a loss in his debut. Then the Niners won 10 in a row. His regular season record with the Niners when he plays, the Niners are 22-5. If you add the postseason to his tally, the 49ers are 24-6 since adding Christian McCaffrey. So if that's not a difference maker, I do not know what would be. Greatest individual performance in any one particular game. Larry, do you have a standout greatest individual performance of the 49ers this year? This is a harder category for you to just fill out mentally without.
Does everybody have to only get one? So is McCaffrey and Purdy gone now?
I will tell you that Christian McCaffrey is also the recipient of my greatest individual performance, and I chose Sunday, October 1st, where he had the 4 total touchdowns, 100 yards rushing, 71 yards receiving, 4 total touchdowns against the Arizona Cardinals, who he scored 7 of his 21 touchdowns against this season. So his first game against the Cardinals was a straight up video game.
Debo had one crazy game. Was it the Eagle game
where he scored? Great game against the Eagles. Yes, he did.
Yeah, I might go with Debo against the Eagles. Just when you think of how big that was in hindsight, I mean, that tunnel screen where he ran diagonally through the defense, even that was a great play by Christian to freeze the linebacker Ellis with the fake. But Debo against the Eagles. I'll go Debo against the Eagles.
Best new guy award, not necessarily rookie. Best new guy, wasn't on the team the year before, is this year. I gave it to Javon Hargrave. Where are you going?
Wow. Let me think about that for a second. Best new guy. Well, there haven't been a lot of new guys.
Right.
I mean,
it's not a long list to choose from.
Yeah. Javon Hargrave was the premier offseason acquisition for sure. But I'm going to go with a sleeper pick because I really think this was a very, very significant addition. I'm going to go with Big John Feliciano, who has played outstanding at guard for the 49ers in some games. I mean, he is talk about a guy who just nobody talked about. Talk about a move that nobody mentioned. Big John Feliciano has been really, really good at times at either guard spot, mostly right guard. And they needed him badly because Burford struggled this year and didn't develop as quickly as I thought he would. I'm going to say Big John Feliciano.
I was going to go with Feliciano too before I settled on Hargrave, who I just think did a great job with his 7 sacks and filling in for a hurt at the end of the year, Eric Armstead. Chase Young could have been on the board, but I don't know if he's done enough. He's represented more of an idea than he has like actual big impact on any game. Jair Brown might have been a candidate, but I don't think he got enough snaps on his body. And unfortunately, excuse me, Ronnie Bell is just not the guy to choose here. So,
well, we're missing the guy who actually probably is the best new guy, and that's Steve Wilkes. Steve Wilkes was, unlike most people who say, hey, come here and run your system. The Niners said, come here and run our system. And then he said, okay, I will. And then they said, well, you know what? Don't get comfortable where you're comfortable. You get comfortable where we're comfortable. And then he came down out of the booth and onto the sideline. And I think he's been a really good addition. So it would be Feliciano 1, Steve Wilkes 1A.
Okay, you're going to have to put your thinking cap on too for this next category, Larry, because it's a little bit more in the abstract. It depends on who you concentrate on and who gets lost in your shuffle. Who is your winner of the Never Take That Guy for Granted award? Because there have been some outstanding seasons that just get lost in the shuffle of conversation because there's so many outstanding individual and collective seasons of success to talk about on the 49ers. But who do you have in the Never Take That Guy for Granted award category? I came up with 2 names. This is the only time I cheated and I split an award between 2 guys. But who do you think of when you think never take that guy for granted? We could talk about the Niners for probably 20 minutes, not bring up his name, but he's a key cog, full stop.
Well, definitely the first name that comes to mind is JJ, Jawan Jennings, but I'm not going that direction. I'm going to go with Dre Greenlaw, who's been a great player in the NFL and has never, ever gotten Pro Bowl consideration. And let's just go, right out of the chute, 6 tackles in week 1 against Pittsburgh, 11 tackles against the Rams, 10 against Arizona, 10 against the Vikings, never fewer than 8 from that point on, 12 against the Ravens, 10 last week against Washington, dinged up. Just an incredible year for Dre Greenlaw. This guy is absolutely an amazing football player. And he gets overshadowed by Fred Warner, and Warner's incredible as well. But I mean, these guys are closer than people realize as far as what their overall contribution is. Dre Greenlaw hits like a truck. He runs 4.5. The Niners ask their linebackers to control that entire second level. It's often kind of like a 5-2 look that they give you. And those two are Greenlaw and Warner. And Warner gets all the love and all the accolades. And I'm just going to say Dre Greenlaw, shout out to Dre.
I really do think that he is the Navarro Bowman to Fred Warner's Patrick Willis. I mean, it's an incredible linebacker duo because of how good Greenlaw is and how outstanding Warner is as well. But yeah, they complement each other perfectly. That is an outstanding choice, Larry. A lot of people on the text line are saying, what about Trent? Trent. To me, like, Trent is not even in the category of taken for granted. Who is taking Trent Williams for granted? The guy is he's the moon, he's the sun, he's the stars for that offensive line. There's no
best
doubt.
Player on the team. I mean, he's not somebody you take for. What team do you take? Is the best player on your team is never taken for granted,
right?
Ever.
I had two guys that just fit my definition of we probably take them for granted. One being Mooney Ward, because, even though he's going to the Pro Bowl this year, none of the secondary is allowed to operate as it operates without Mooney Ward, without a legit number one corner who can take on all the big boys and the bad checks that nobody else wants. Lenore never would have found his, water level on this defense. You don't get to Ambry Thomas on this defense. You don't get Steve Wilkes doesn't get to operate the defense the way that he wants to without a guy like Javarius Ward, who is just spectacular this year. And the other guy, Larry, I'm going with George Kittle. I feel like George Kittle, for a guy who gets a ton of attention and camera time, is still almost hidden in plain sight. He had a sneaky 65 catch, 1,000 yard season. When we sit around and talk about the great performances, George Kittle's name's not going to come up once, and it should. But he does get lost in the sauce because he is so good. There are better blocking tight ends maybe in football who are just blocking tight ends. I couldn't name them. Charlie Werner is a hell of a blocking tight end. He's not as good as Kittle, but there are great blocking tight ends out there. There are probably better receiving tight ends than George Kittle, but when you package them all into the position, I still think that he is the prototype. He is the best all things tight end in football. And he deserves it. He's in a tight end class all by himself. No one fills the entire role of tight end better than George Kittle. Rookie of the year. Again, a very short list to choose from. Larry, I don't want to steer your decision making. Without reservation, I go with Jake Moody. I know he's a little bit of a persona non grata this past week, but Jake Moody went 21-25, missed 4 field goals all year, only missed 1 point after touchdown after setting the rookie record. Jake Moody, even though he has absolutely contributed to the loss column at least twice, has had a really good rookie year for a kicker. Full stop.
I'm going Jair Brown. I mean, Jair Brown, it's really hard to step in at safety. This guy, Fafanga went down. Gibson at times has been hurt. Jair Brown, there's nothing that he can't do and do well. He's got great ball skills and coverage down the field. He's like another linebacker in the box. His enthusiasm and for the game is just awesome. And look at the production. I mean, the guy stepped in, and he gives you 5-6 tackles in almost every game. He's been good. He's got a couple of interceptions. He's made some big plays. So I'm going to say Jair Brown.
By the way, look at how difficult it is to win any postseason award. We've given out a lot that could be interpreted in a whole bunch of different ways. We haven't even gotten to the name Brandon Ayuk. Brandon Ayuk had a spectacular year, could have been a runaway winner in maybe more than one of these categories, but that's how hard it is to win. Our final category, Larry, this is maybe the toughest to decipher too. Who is your 2023 most improved player? And remember, you still cannot pick Brock Purdy, so it's got to come from somewhere else. Who is the most improved 49ers player. I have 2 runner-ups and then absolutely my winner. Before I share mine, I'd like to hear yours.
Most improved 49er. I'm going to go with a guy who I absolutely know is the correct answer. I'm going to go with Demo. Diamador Lenore. Diamador Lenore has been, this guy, I talked to him in training camp. I said, Demo, man, it looks like you look a little lighter than than last year. And he's like, actually I put on weight. And I said, really? That's amazing, because you look totally different. And he spent his off season at the Mamba Institute down in Southern California. And this kid just badly wants it. And he repositioned his body. He lost some fat, he gained some muscle, and he showed up this year as a guy who was ready to play full-time on the corner and to be a hitter. He's not just a cover guy. This guy can cover you. He's competitive. You saw that night hit that he had on the Eagle running back in the fourth quarter of the Eagle game. Demo Lenore has emerged. He does something that's amazing. He can play in the slot and then bounce out to the boundary and then bounce back to the slot and play both spots equally well. They're totally different, especially in the run game. In the run game, the slot corner is basically like a linebacker in the box. And this guy is physical, and he's tough, and he's fast, and he's incredibly improved. So I'm going to say Demo.
I think it's a fine choice. Fine choice. I won't argue with it at all. My 2 runner-ups. In third place, I have Deebo Samuel. He said he'd never have a year like 2022 again, and his 2023 was a lot better. To me, that's improved. And for the 49ers to be at their most dangerous, Deebo is right in the center of those game plans and those games. So I'm going with Deebo as a third runner-up. Second runner-up, Colton McKivitz. Remember, the right side of that offensive line was supposed to be the reason why this year would stop short of its full goals. I think that he plays next to the weakest spot on the team, which is right guard, and he has done more than appoint himself well at right tackle. He had at least the equivalent of, if not better than Mike McGlinchey. I'm giving Colton McKivitz, who handled that right tackle job better than I think anybody thought he would, certainly based on, everything we heard coming out of training camp. So I'm going to go with McKivitz as my first runner-up, but my winner from the same group that Lenore comes from, I'm going to go with Ambry Thomas, because I think that this is the year he turned himself into a real NFL player and a real starting caliber corner who can run with anyone. He's big enough to tackle anybody. I thought it was his addition taking over for Oliver right after that bye week, which really changed the season arc of this defense. And again, Lenore is right in that conversation too. I'm not surprised that both of us took a young corner, and I do think that young corner play has been the key of the Niners being allowed to be who they've been. I mean, without these young guys, without that young group stepping up, none of this is happening. So Steve Wilks gets an awful lot of credit for that. And remember, Steve Wilks began this year kind of on the outs with a lot of Niners fans. He has turned his reputation around to the point where he might be most improved based on where the year started and where it finishes with Steve Wilks and his group. And each of us took a player from his group of young secondary players. And there you go. There are your 49ers postseason awards. Is there any category that you would like to illuminate, Larry? Is there any name that you feel like we haven't done our jobs correctly unless we, in a season recap, talk about this guy right here, right now? Again, we kind of already mentioned Brandon Ayuk, who's been spectacular all year. Did we leave anyone else out?
Yeah, I do think we left out we covered almost everybody. But as far as guys that were, really impactful, that we left out, I think we left out 2 that we have to mention here. And that is the forgotten guys, the guys that are damn good and nobody talks about them ever. And I'm going to say George Odom on special teams. Now he's coming back this week. Hopefully they opened his window and there's a chance they'll activate him. George Odom is a Pro Bowl special teamer, and this guy just absolutely makes play after play after play on coverage. He's really, really good. They invested the money to go get a top tier special teamer, and that's exactly what George is. He's a tone setter. And to me, tone setter is like the highest compliment I can pay anybody on a football field, is that, man, these guys set the tone. George Odom is one of those guys. Great guy. Go check out my YouTube interviews of him. And he's very real. He's a man of faith. He's a good dude. He's a hard hitter. And you could come and name a bunch of guys and people would never name him. So I'm going to say George Odom. And the other guy that I think is really looked over and needs to be recognized is Big Aaron Banks at left guard. He's sitting there next to Trent Williams, and he's just doing his job. And it's like a really good offensive lineman is oftentimes just not noticed. And that's what Aaron Banks is. He's a really good offensive lineman. Second-round pick out of Notre Dame. A lot of people thought he was a bust. He really did emerge this year as an outstanding player. He's going to be a 10-year pro. He's smart. He's tough. There's a reason the Niners run left. When they run their most successful runs, it's between Banks and Trent on the left side. So Banks is he's a Coke machine with wheels. You know what I mean? He's like that broad. And he's smart. He's tough. He's played hurt. He's battled a very painful turf toe. I talk to him almost every week, and it's like, dude, this guy, he also had a baby boy born this year, so he's had a new addition to his family, and it's like we've had a lot of fun this year talking about life, talking about family, talking about football, and he's a tough guy, but he's a Bay Area son. He's from El Cerrito. Love Aaron Banks, man. Tremendous player. Very, very underrated 49er.
Here's how good of a season Aaron Banks had. We didn't mention him once.
Yeah.
And that's the ultimate compliment you can give to an interior lineman. Didn't mention his name once. That's how good he was. He never stood out. He was never a problem. We didn't have to discuss him. Don't worry about that guy. He's been fantastic. The other guy whose name I just think needs to be used based on the amount of snaps that he's gotten, the amount of responsibility, and the way that he's answered the bell finally in his first healthy year in the NFL is Javon Kinlaw. Javon Kinlaw is never going to be a Pro Bowler. Javon Kinlaw no one's going to go out and buy a Kinlaw jersey. He does an awful lot of that garbage man work. He absorbs the blocks that allow other people around him to have more shine put on him. There's no way that Cleveland Farrell has the impactful year that he's had without Javon Kinlaw, because they get a lot of reps together. So I just want to put his name out there too, but it's really been an outstanding year of football from the 49ers. Their blind spots have been far and few between, and their defeats have been far and few between. We know that 3 of them came in that bunch right before the bye week, but man, that just feels like a million years ago. And it's why the expectations for this postseason are, nothing short of parade goes up Market Street. And those are incredible expectations for everyone to just assume you're going to meet them this year. You're ready. It's your year. Who is the biggest threat to the 49ers in the Super Bowl should they reach it, Larry? Who's the one team that if you could eliminate them from the AFC right now, you would do it based on threat to the 49ers?
A lot of people think it's going to be the Baltimore Ravens, but for me, it's not. The 49ers can beat the Baltimore Ravens. The team that is the scariest coming out of the AFC is the Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills were 6-6, and now they've won 5 in a row. And if they wind up in Vegas on Super Bowl Sunday, they will have won 8 in a row. And Josh Allen, as sure as we're sitting here, is absolutely going to win a Super Bowl in his career. And I just don't want to see it be this year. So it's Buffalo to me. Their defense is coming on. Von Miller's back. Daquan Jones is back. They almost didn't make the playoffs. What's really scary about the Buffalo Bills beyond Josh Allen is that because they got off to that 6-6 start after 12 games, they have been in playoff mode longer than any team. And that means that there's a razor's edge toughness to them. They've been playing on the edge, knowing that if they lose, they go home. And that's a tough way to play. And they've found a way to win in that capacity 5 in a row. So I'm very afraid of the Buffalo Bills if they're there in Vegas, because they will have won 8 in a row, and they've got a Hall of Fame type talent at quarterback who's up and down. And a lot of people say, "Oh yeah, but he's only 500 in the playoffs." Well, he'll be quite a bit above 500 if they get there, right? He's 4-4 now. He'll be 7-4 on Super Bowl Sunday if they get there. And Buffalo worries me. Von Miller can be a pass rush all unto himself. And, Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen. And it's just, the Buffalo Bills, definitely the Buffalo Bills. I think the Niners can beat the Ravens if they don't turn it over 5 times. But I don't, and I don't know if Buffalo gets to the winner's circle. They're going to have unfreaking believable momentum if they get to Super Bowl Sunday. So I'm going to say the Buffalo Bills.
Ravens, Bills, either one of them is a definite candidate for don't want. Let me just put 2 more in front of you. You don't want the Cleveland Browns on a heater. And even though they might not be who they used to be, Patrick Mahomes is enough of a magician to where in a big game with the best defense he's ever had, he's probably finding 24 points for you in a big game. So are you ready? Are you ready to score at least 24 against the Kansas City Chiefs? And that's a pretty good defense. So
it's a very good defense. It's a very good defense. But the only thing I'll say about the Chiefs, and people have been blaming and framing their receivers as horrible all year, and they are. I mean, they've dropped a ton of balls, 25 from their wide receivers. They lead the NFL in drops. But their tackles have made tons of penalties. Mahomes has not had a stellar year. Travis Kelce, despite being, Taylor Swifted and all these people loving Travis Kelce and knowing Travis Kelce, it's ironic because this was his down year, really, career-wise. And I just think that, Kansas City has more problems offensively than just their receivers don't catch the ball.
Yeah, I'll say this for Travis Kelce, too, who has looked a little bit older, slowed down a little bit more this year, especially at the end of the year. I think all those NFL reps eventually put a tax on your body. His body's paying that tax right now. There was nowhere to go but down from Travis Kelce. Like, that's how good he was last year. He was borderline Jerry Rice last year. That's how dangerous and good he was in just the last couple of years. So there was nowhere to go but down for Kelce. And once you start looking at it this way, Larry, I got a really good work ethic. I do believe you do as well. We work hard. If either one of our wives are billionaires or we were dating a billionaire, I bet you we'd work a little less hard. Just a little, just a scotch, right? I mean, come on. It's human nature. It's human nature. You start looking at that exit plan. Not that Travis is looking at Taylor Swift as a meal ticket because he's got enough money to never run out of it in his own right. But, oh, my God. I mean, what's the old Marvin Hagler line? It's hard to go do your road work when you're sleeping in 10,000 count silk sheets.
Yeah.
So maybe that's got a little something to do with it slowing down. But look, as we're watching with the Golden State Warriors, for so many athletes, when it's over, it feels like it comes to a screeching halt. You think that you're going to get a good grace of a gradual downhill. A lot of people, to improve as athletes, there's a gradual uphill. And not all performance is linear, but it feels like a gradual uphill. And then when you get to the plateau of your career, you're lucky to ride out a few years at that all-pro level. And then you think, okay, well, like any hill, it's going to be a gradual drop off on the other side. No, in sports, sometimes it goes, boom, you're done. You went from really good to cannot play. And we're seeing that in sports. We've seen it a million times. We'll see it a million times more. Again, this is why LeBron James might truly be the single greatest basketball player of all time, because nobody's done better in a one-on-one game against Father Time ever than LeBron has. And it's just, screeching halts are how so many careers end. Screeching halts. So I think Kelsey's doing a pretty good job battling his screeching halt. He's not there, but it feels like it could be coming. It's been a hell of a week. A hell of a week for sports headlines, coaching change, and it looks like we have our first official next guy up to report. All precincts are reporting that Jared Mayo is going to be named the next head coach of the New England Patriots, almost following in the D'Amico Ryans footsteps, where D'Amico was, he played for one team. He played really, really well for one team. He comes back as the head coach of that team. Jared Mayo only played for the New England Patriots. He was an all-pro. He won a Super Bowl with them. He has been a coach on that staff. All he knows is the Patriots, and it looks like he's the next guy up. That's a really good hire for the Patriots, and them going with a defensive coach is the maybe. Like, I thought that would be the difference maker. Like, okay, so the Patriots really need to rev up this offense again. Maybe they're going to look for an offensive mind, but no, Jared Mayo is the hire.
Well, what they're looking for is they're trying to keep what they have, which is they've got a pretty good defense and they want some continuity there. But let's make no mistake about it. I mean, they need a major overhaul offensively. It's a horrendous offensive football team. And, we'll see. We'll see who they hire as their offensive coaches and what they do at quarterback. I mean, they have the worst collection of offensive talent in football. But this allows them to, not have chaos across both sides of the ball, right? So now, yes, Belichick rides off into the sunset, but there's continuity on defense, and it's a defense that they like. And so they'll stay with the same scheme, and they'll have less turnover there, and they still got to sign Kyle Duggar. He's a free agent. So, and Josh Uche. So they're arguably one of their best players on the back end and one of their best players on the front have to be re-signed. But if they can re-sign those key free agents and have Mayo step in for Belichick, they probably don't lose anything defensively. And then it's all about just improve their offense. So I think I don't know how it's going to work out, but they leaned on Tom Brady. There's an awful lot of talk too that Josh McDaniels is going to find his way back to New England. And maybe there's some continuity there by having him come back. He failed miserably with the Raiders. He failed in Denver as a head coach. Some guys top out as coordinators, and I could see McDaniels coming back as the OC and trying to go that route. So obviously, Kraft wants to go with people that they're comfortable with and that they know. And so McDaniels would make sense as the OC because he knows him. And obviously the continuity piece with Mayo. So we'll see how it works out. I think the Patriots are going to be bad for a while.
Yeah, I do too. It's going to take them a while in an emerging AFC East. Bills aren't going anywhere. Dolphins are on the come. And, the Jets with a healthy quarterback are going to be a different animal than they were this year. So, yeah, it feels like the Patriots have quite a bit of work to do before they get back to any New England Patriots status that threatens for, championships quite like the way they used to. It's been a week of change in the NFL, and it leads us into Super Wildcard Weekend, which comes roaring in 1:30 West Coast Saturday on NBC. We get going with Browns and Texans. Feels like the Texans always get that first up on a Saturday slot, but they're happy to be there this time because you want to talk about ahead of schedule with a rookie quarterback and a rookie head coach. The Texans have a pretty darn good shot to beat the Browns, even though the Browns are -2 in this game. I do think the Browns probably win this game. Stefanski's had a hell of a year keeping a team on track that's been dealing with injury and change everywhere. Browns and Texans is a very sneaky, interesting game. Even though it's our first up, it's one of the most interesting of the entire weekend.
Yeah, I mean, you got a rookie quarterback going against the number one defense in football. So, we'll see how it goes. I like the Browns to win this game, even though Houston will be at home. Houston, it's amazing the difference between this Texans team with that rookie receiver from Houston, Tank Dell, and when he's been out. Their 20-yard plays have gone down. They still have good receivers: Nico Collins, Noah Brown. I think Robert Woods is hurt in this game. But yeah, I think this can be a good football game. But I like the Browns. The Browns have great players, though. The one thing that's kind of late breaking on this story is that Denzel Ward is dinged up now, and Denzel Ward is like 50-50. I think he's questionable to play in this game, and that could hurt. That could hurt the Browns quite a bit. But yeah, he's questionable. And the one thing about the Browns and Joe Flacco, they do turn it over a lot, but they also take the ball away. They got JOK, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah in the middle, and he's as good a linebacker as I think there is right now. And then, of course, Myles Garrett might be the best defensive lineman in football. So, I like the Browns. I like the Browns to. I think the Browns are going to be, they're not going to win it all, and they're not going to the Super Bowl, but they're going to be that story in the early part of the playoffs. I think they win this game, and I think there's a very good chance they knock off the Ravens.
Then you better be ready to let your peacock plumage out, because you got to go over to Peacock to watch Dolphins and Chiefs. Again, that is a big game to put behind a paywall on a Saturday, but that's how they're going to get you to sign up for Peacock, because if you're a football fan, you have to watch Dolphins and Chiefs in what they're saying is going to be like 6-degree weather at Arrowhead. It's going to be bone chilling. And we know how poorly historically Miami's done when the temperature drops below freezing for them in any road game. Dolphins, Chiefs, do you give Josh McDaniel a puncher chance at Arrowhead?
No, I don't. They just signed Bruce Irvin. They just signed, Houston. I mean, they lost Bradley Chubb, who had a great year, and, they lost Jalen Phillips, and then they had Van Ginkel as their third defensive end. Now he's out. There's going to be no Jerome Baker. So you can make an argument that 4 of their top 5 defensive players are out in this game. Tua's not reading coverage. I think this is the easiest cover of the weekend. Take the Chiefs, give the 3.5 points, and don't think twice. Mahomes is 9-2 at home in the playoffs. Miami hasn't won a playoff game since, 2000 or something like that. I mean, you got to go way back. They were competitive last year in the cold weather against Buffalo, but this year I think they're going to fold like a cheap suit.
Tyreek Hill's return to Arrowhead, unless he has like a 200-yard game. I don't know how the Dolphins do it. We move on to Sunday, and you want to talk about, I don't know how they do it, because if they were to do it, it was going to be with an overwhelming defensive effort. And I don't know how the Steelers can have an overwhelming defensive effort with neither Micah Parsons nor TJ Watt playing. And neither of those guys are going to go for the Steelers at the Bills, 10 a.m. West Coast time, CBS, Sunday morning. Steelers at the Bills. It feels like Bills in a romp. They're minus 10, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be freezing. The one thing that's a little scary in this game is, I may tease this down with the under, just simply because it's a low number. So I may tease it up and then go under. But it's 10 is a lot, because it could be a very low scoring game. The weather's going to be horrible. Like they're saying, Damon, there may be like 40 or 50 mile an hour winds. So that should favor the Steelers from the standpoint of, if it's a run only kind of a game, they've got Warren and Najee, some power backs. They might be able to stay in this game a little bit, but Minka's nowhere near 100%. There's no TJ Watt. The Bills are peaking.
Wait, nowhere near. Are you saying that Fitzpatrick is going to play? Because what I read earlier this week was that he was out.
I heard last night that he's going to try to give it a go. He hasn't practiced though in weeks.
Okay.
So I like Buffalo. I like Buffalo big in that game.
I do
but
too.
I don't know. I think it's going to be a low scoring game. So like if you told me that the Bills won that game 17-3, I could see it.
What if I told you that the Dallas Cowboys lost their first home game of the year in the wild card round to the Green Bay Packers, fired Mike McCarthy when the game was over, and went and hired Bill Belichick as their next head coach? What do you think of that? Bill Belichick and the Dallas Cowboys after McCarthy gets fired after dropping his playoff opener at home.
This is the one where Niner fans are gonna, if Green Bay pulls the upset, people are gonna be like, oh yes, Dallas is done. But in reality, that means Green Bay comes to San Francisco, and Green Bay is, I think, going to be a tougher opponent for the Niners to beat than Dallas. Dallas can't stop the run, and Green Bay's got, a lot of good weapons in the pass game. I like Green Bay. I'll take Green Bay in those points all day, every day. They've got really young weapons. They're one of the youngest teams to make it to the playoffs in decades. They're so young that they don't realize what they're doing and where they're at. And the real reason I love Green Bay is that their D-line is really playing ball right now. And when I say their D-line, I'm talking about Devontae Wyatt, Rashawn Gary, Kenny Clark, Carl Brooks. These guys are all sacking the quarterback, and they're opportunistic on the back end with Savage and Jair Alexander, I should say. And
Jair's right, Larry.
Yeah, I got to get my Jairs right. But I love Dallas has played the easiest schedule, and they took apart every bad team by an average of 30 points a game. So people look at that point differential and their record at home and go, oh, Dallas is a freaking juggernaut at home and this and that. No, they beat the Commanders. They beat Patriots. They beat all these dog meat teams. Green Bay, Jordan Love in his last 8 games has 18 touchdowns and 1 pick. And their young position player talent are their skilled guys. Luke Musgrave, Tucker Kraft, Christian Watson's playing in this game. Jaden Reed, Dontavion Wicks, Romeo Dobbs. They still have Aaron Jones. Give me Green Bay. I'm taking Green Bay all day. Brian Gutekunst is building a monster in Green Bay. Everybody talks about Detroit. It's Green Bay. Green Bay is going to be that team that's coming. There's still a future play as far as the Super Bowl is concerned, but they're going to be good enough to say goodbye to Dallas. And I think the McCarthy era ends this weekend.
It'd be interesting to see what kind of game Aaron Jones has. He's questionable right now. I bet he does play. The running back with the most yards, I think, is the running back who wins that game. Jones or Pollard, who's it going to be? So it should be a hell of a game. That is on Fox, 5:00 NBC. If you would like a wild card game with drama and storylines dripping all over it, it is the Lions who are hosting their first playoff game in 30 years. And of course, it's Matthew Stafford who is coming in to ruin that party. Wow. We, of course, have the, Jared Goff tie to the Rams, and he's in Detroit now. There's so much back and forth on these rosters and the quarterback positions alone. Rams and Lions, it feels like the Rams are the popular choice here. I almost hope it's the Lions, Larry. I want to see the Detroit Lions win a home playoff game just to hear what that sounds like in Detroit. My gut is with the Lions. My head is with the Rams.
I like the over. Nobody's going to stop anybody in this game. This is going to be a shootout.
Day, by the way, 51.5.
Yeah, I would. That's another one. I would tease it down and go over. The Lions are 25th in the league in yards per game allowed through the air, and the Rams come in throwing the heck out of the ball. But that atmosphere is going to be crazy. I think Goff's going to have a great game. I don't think the Rams can stop the Lions, but I don't think the Lions can stop the Rams, and I think the crowd's going to be going nuts. The Rams are a 1/3 of a team. Their special teams are putrid. Their defense is just passable. They're only an offensive team. The Lions are a complete football team that's just not quite ready to roll.
And they're going to miss Laporta in this game.
They're saying he's going to go.
No.
Yeah, they're saying he's going to go. Now, I don't believe he's going to be much of a factor, but I think, he's a tough ass. He's gonna give it a shot. But I just like Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery running the ball. I think Dan Campbell is going to have a great game plan. I think they're going to play ball control. They're going to dominate the time of possession. They're going to keep the Rams offense on the sidelines, and the Lions are going to find a way to beat the Rams in Detroit. So I like the Lions in that game. I think the crowd carries them. As I said, I just think the Lions are a complete football team that's a year ahead of its schedule. The Rams are 1/3 of a football team. So I'll take the complete football team over the 1/3 team.
Doesn't matter if you have one ass cheek and 3 toes. I will beat your ass.
Okay, thank you very much, Coach Campbell. And then, Larry, we wrap up Wild Card Weekend on a Monday night where you can't put more pressure on a football team and a head coach than is on the Eagles and Nick Sirianni to stop the free fall that they've been in about the last 6 weeks since they played the Niners. Everything around the Eagles is bad and negative, and they're going to Tampa Bay to take on a Buccaneers team which nobody's talking about. If Tom Brady were still the quarterback, Buccaneers would be a huge story. But because it's Baker Mayfield, they're as under the radar as any playoff team. I guarantee you most football fans, if we asked them, name every single team playing this wild card weekend, I bet you the most football fans would leave the Buccaneers out of it. They're forgotten. They're hidden in plain sight. I think they beat the Eagles.
Yeah, I do too. And this could be the end of the Sirianni era. Unbelievable, but I think it's very possible. The Eagles are coming apart at the seams. They did get one team here in Tampa that they might be able to handle, but you just got housed by the New York Giants. You just lost at home to the Arizona Cardinals. Now you're going to roll into Tampa, and with your lousy pass defense and mediocre pass rush, you're somehow going to beat a team that has Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. No, I'll take Tampa. I like Tampa in that game. The Eagles are favored. The wrong team's favored. That's all based on rep. I'll take Tampa in those. And you're getting 2.5 in Tampa. You're getting, I think, the better team. It would take the Eagles to get off the canvas and really show something here. And I don't think they're capable. I think their problems are real. Not only that, every week that goes by, their problems get worse. Their pass defense has been bad all year. Their pass rush is not great. And recently, they're not stopping the run either. So, not that Tampa's got a great runner, but I like Tampa at home to get that done.
I do too. And that brings us to the conclusion of our what's coming up during Super Wildcard Weekend, which means, Larry, it's official. We have achieved and we have reached
Maximum football!
Every time I play that, Ray Ratto dies just a little bit inside. He hated that so much. So there it is.
Ray these days?
I don't know. Dude, I don't know. I haven't reached out to him in 2024 yet. He will eventually make the show reluctantly at some point, I would imagine. Or maybe not. Maybe he's deleted my number from his phone and we'll never hear from Ray again. We just don't know.
By the way, if we're talking about Belichick's next spot, what do you think of Philly?
Roster loaded and ready to go.
You got a GM in place. He doesn't have to be the GM. It's in the Northeast. He's obviously comfortable living in the Northeast. It's not that far away from New England. He's got some pieces on defense. They need to retool their secondary in the worst way. Is there a better person on the planet to help you retool your pass defense than Bill Belichick? Probably not. I think Belichick and Philly make a lot of sense.
Johnny F. Groove says Ray was on KNBR yesterday. Oh, well, no wonder why we haven't heard him and can't find him.
He's hiding in plain sight. Did he stay awake?
Yeah. So there you go. There is your wild card weekend preview. And now I guess, Larry, we've officially reached the point in the show where it's time to check out some of the comments that have come through.
Well, first of all, let's announce the All-Pro team. There's 5 Niners on the All-Pro team and 2 Niners on the second team All-Pro team. So here's the All-Pro team. And this is the AP All-Pro team. This is not the NFLPA All-Pro team.
Okay.
This was selected by national panel of 50 media members. So this is the actual All-Pro team for this season. At quarterback, Lamar Jackson. At running back, Christian McCaffrey. And there's only one guy per league. I mean, it's both conferences. At fullback, Kyle Juszczyk. At tight end, not Taylor Swift's boyfriend, George Kittle. At wide receiver, Tyreek Hill, CeeDee Lamb, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Amon-Ra finally gets some recognition.
For a guy who didn't make the Pro Bowl, being All-Pro is something else.
Yeah, and it's happened a few times before. Left tackle, Trent Williams. Left guard, Joe Thuney, Kansas City. Center, Jason Kelsey, Philadelphia. Right guard, Zach Martin, Dallas. Right tackle, Penei Sewell, Detroit. He's a monster. We flip the card. We go to defense. Edge rushers, Myles Garrett and TJ Watt. Interior linemen, Aaron Donald and Chris Jones. Linebackers, 3 of them. Fred Warner, Roquan Smith, Quincy Williams of the Jets. Corner, Sauce Gardner and Deron Bland. Slot corner, Trent McDuffie, Kansas City. Safeties, Kyle Hamilton, Antoine Winfield Jr., another guy that missed out on the Pro Bowl, unbelievably, Antoine Winfield Jr. Place kicker, the rookie Brandon Aubrey of Dallas, the punter A.J. Cole of the Raiders, the kick returner Kayshawn Nixon of the Packers, the punt returner Rashid Shaheed, New Orleans, special teamer Miles Killebrew, Pittsburgh, long snapper Ross Matisic, Jacksonville.
Pepper got screwed.
There you go. And as far as the second teamers, the highlights, we won't give you the whole second team unit, but on the second team unit, it says at wide receiver, A.J. Brown, Puka Nacua, asterisk, Brandon Ayuk, asterisk, Mike Evans. I'm not sure what the asterisk is for. Let me see if it says at the bottom. Asterisk means tied for the second team spot. So there you go.
Okay.
So yeah, it was so Puka and Ayuk tied.
You know, Bucko Sports picks out something here on the text line that immediately hit my ear too. Are you telling me that Micah Parsons is not an All-Pro?
Right. Not a first team All-Pro. He's a second team All-Pro.
Okay.
Second team All-Pro is Micah Parsons. But I should say Ayuk actually is not an asterisk. Oh, yeah, it is. It's Ayuk and Evans both got the asterisk. So they're both on the second team All-Pro list. Other Niners on the second team All-Pro list include Charvarius Ward.
Charvarius Ward deserves it. He absolutely deserved it. To me, that would have been a huge oversight. Fred Warner, did you say he's first team All-Pro?
First team All-Pro. 5 Niners first team All-Pro, 2 Niners second team All-Pro. There you go. 7 combined first or second team All-Pros for the 49ers. All right, now it's time.
Now it's officially time. Let's get into the super chats. What do you got, Larry?
Well, we read this one before. Ricky Williams, we lost Adam to the Commanders.
Adam Peters is now with the Washington Commanders. If you're joining us late, didn't hear it earlier, Adam Peters out of the Niners front office. Bob Myers gets his guy.
Kilo TW, should the Niners be worried about the rain next week? It's going to be raining all next weekend. I don't think so. The Niners are a team that has an exceptionally strong running game. So, just makes things a little bit more random, but no, it's not Candlestick where it's going to be a quagmire. The turf at Levi's is pretty solid. So I think it might hold up actually. I don't think that should be a concern. Like the teams that can't run would be the teams that really have to be concerned in the rain. JJ Raider says, "You're crazy, Larry. You're crazy." Sure, that was my Belichick point.
That was the Belichick point. Absolutely.
Brady Hill says, "What are some things in the CFL you like opposed to the NFL?" I like the 3 downs in the CFL where you're thinking pass all the time. So it makes you be you're trying to score on every play in the Canadian League. And I'll say this, I think in a wider field, which the CFL has the wider field, it highlights the athleticism more. So you have, it's more emphasis on movement and less emphasis on just brute force. So these gigantic fat bodies that play defensive tackle or offensive guard in the CFL, you got to have movement ability because it's just a wider field. So that's what I like.
I don't think that there's any need for the NFL to adapt a single element of CFL football. A deeper end zone to give you more room to operate might increase red zone scoring.
That's interesting.
Maybe make red zone pass attempts go up and a little bit more exciting. To me, that the only
pre-snap motion, I mean, like you can move towards the line of scrimmage in the CFL pre-snap.
Right. I would say that the only sport that needs to grow its playing surface is the NBA.
Yeah.
The NBA needs to grow its court. Players have become too big.
Well, not only that, I mean, how many when we were kids, or even when we were teenagers, even when we were in our 20s, nobody hardly ever stepped out of bounds. You can't watch 10 minutes of an NBA game without somebody stepping on the baseline.
Right.
It's like in this pace and space era of basketball, people want to stay spread out so badly. Well, as soon as you get the ball on the perimeter and you make a drive to the hoop, that back foot steps out of bounds. I mean, it happens so often that it's almost ridiculous.
By the way, could you imagine pre-snap motion towards the line of scrimmage being allowed? Can you imagine if Tyreek Hill got a running head start on you? How do you even defend that?
Oh, I know. It'd be absolutely amazing. Florida Niner Fanatic says, Kyle Juszczyk, love the show. Thank you for what you do.
Thank you. I'm glad Kyle Juszczyk got a random shout out there. Don't know what part of the show.
Probably a vote. It was a vote. It was a vote for probably,
underrated,
most improved, underrated, something like that. Bruce R., who's in the chat all the time, says, happy birthday, Larry. Appreciate the Niners coverage. Think it will be weekend upsets prediction. Texans, Dolphins, Steelers, Rams, Eagles. Wow. Steelers to beat the Bills in Buffalo. Well, Dolphins to beat Chiefs in KC. Wow. Bruce.
All I can tell you, Larry, is we always get at least, 2 road wins, right? Isn't that kind of the formula? You always get a couple of road wins here. So, Browns is kind of expected. We need someone then to join the upset parade. Dolphins.
I think Green Bay's that team.
Right. And then honestly, the Eagles are probably that team too. The Eagles should be that team, right? The Eagles should go to Tampa and win, but they might not.
Yeah. Let's hope they don't. Because I want to see Sirianni just seriously. I'd love to see Sirianni fired after how smug he was earlier this year. 49er fan LA says the difference this time around is we finally have a legit quarterback. His confidence is unmatched. He really believes he's the best. Just play mistake free. That's a good observation. And the last one here, JJ Raider. Happy birthday, Larry. Thank you, JJ. Appreciate you, brother. Good stuff, Damon. There was one topic that my friend Kyle Posey wrote a great story on Niners Nation, and I would encourage you. It's a short story, kind of like a Jack London short story. No, but which unit do you have more faith in for the 49ers heading into the playoffs? The Niners offense or the Niners defense? It's not a bad little topic right there. What do you think?
Well, I have more faith in the Niners offense than I've had ever before, just based on they got their quarterback, they got the playmakers, and they've got the running back to do it all, and they've had the point totals. And I just think that Kyle Shanahan with a script coming out has been deadly all year. I mean, the 10 touchdowns on opening drives in 17 games, the most amount of points scored in the NFL on opening drives, that all goes into the mix of why I would choose this offense. Again, the defense is good enough. That offense is as dangerous as I think we've seen it in the Shanahan era.
Yeah, I would say I have more belief in the offense than the defense. But I'll say this, with the 49ers having rest, I think rest is a big part of it. I mentioned to Fred Warner.
Right. Missed tackles is probably the biggest ramification of an unrested Niner team. So if rest truly equals, you could draw a straight parallel line between rested and tackling proficiency, then the Niners are about to whip some ass.
By the way, the San Francisco Giants have agreed to a 4-year, $44 million contract with free agent right-hander Jordan Hicks. I like this.
That's a good deal.
I like this one because this guy throws smoke.
He does.
I mean, you got Jordan Hicks as a 27-year-old throwing smoke in front of Doval.
11 million a year? That's it?
11 million a year, 44 mil for Jordan Hicks. I like that addition a lot. I'll be doing a video on that when this is over. Yeah, I really like that. That's a great one. At first, I was thinking, you talking about the Yankee outfielder? But that's Aaron Hicks. Jordan Hicks, yes. I was like, they just overpaid dramatically for an outfielder coming off a nightmare year. No, it's the hard throwing former Cardinal right-handed reliever who throws 106 or something like that.
Look, the only shot. I did think he hit 104 on the clock for sure, maybe 106. I don't know. I'd have to look that up.
But that is smoke, dude. I love that. I love guys throwing super hard out of the pen, because guess what? When you throw that hard, you can miss in the middle of the plate and it's okay.
Get away with it.
Yeah.
Well, and look, if the Niners are going to have, or excuse me, if the Giants are going to have any shot of just remaining, and forget about competing,
better shut it down.
If they're going to have a summer that even invites you to pay a little bit of attention, they got to be pitching. And it's time for them to absolutely just go out and overpay for Snell.
Go get Cody Bellinger, by the way. I don't want to be pitching. I want to be hitting.
But hitting that ship has sailed. That's not going to happen.
You can get Reese Hoskins right now. You can get Cody Bellinger right now. I mean, Farhan, what's your aversion to dangerous hitters? Get one.
They're going to have to. The reason why I like the Hicks,
you got to keep trying, though. I know what you're saying, Damon. I agree with your premise, which is be good on the mound. But you still got to score some runs, man.
They do.
Still got to score some runs.
Here's the thing. The best way for the Giants to win is to really be that team that's playing 7-inning games.
Yeah.
Get a lead.
You have to shut it down when you lead in the 7th.
Exactly. You get more than 5 blown saves this year means the Giants aren't going to the postseason. And by the way, they're not going to the postseason anyways. So.
We're going to the postseason before they're going to the postseason. Strawberry reacts as, man, Larry's a closet Packer fan. No, you know what I am, though? I'm a keen observer of personnel momentum, because I really think that's what people don't notice. They don't know all the talent. And so people don't know when a team's just pretty good or when they have legitimate personnel momentum. And Brian Gutekunst is the GM there in Green Bay. He's a very good young GM, and they have personnel momentum. And I know it. Now you know it. And this weekend, the Cowboys are going to know it. And Mike McCarthy is going to be, going to unfortunately be the guy who knows it up close, because it's going to cost him his gig.
And let's face it, Gutekunst was the recipient of an awful lot of bad press because he was the guy who had to hand Aaron Rodgers his walking papers. And there was a massive public pushback from Rodgers himself.
He traded up for Jordan Love. A lot of people ripped him for that, but now Jordan Love's coming of age,
right,
looking like a Rodgers or a Favre. So
right, it's all coming into focus, and LaFleur knows what he's doing. So yeah, it's Packers are the demise of the Green Bay Packers and the seeding of the NFC North to just the Lions and the Vikings has been a bit over exaggerated.
Green Bay is the best organization in that division. No doubt. I think Lions and Packers battle for that thing for the next 5-6 years.
And what a mistake I believe the Chicago Bears made by retaining Matt Eberflus. I don't get it. You're either going to have a defensive coordinator, a defensive coach presiding over the all-important third year of Justin Fields, or you're moving off of Justin Fields and you're taking a QB number 1 in the draft and you're leaving. So Eberflus is unqualified to either take that next step with Fields or groom the next quarterback, and he remains the head coach. I don't get what Chicago is doing. That's a poorly run organization and has been for decades.
I never liked Eberflus. I told Tom, I told Tate, Eberflus needs like double a meat cheese with more sausage and garlic. Definitely extra garlic for Eberflus.
I wrote down one name, and it was not Eberflus. Here we are.
Peace.